Well, hello everybody. I'm Ed Parcaut, I'm Aces 53, and normally it's myself and Brian here today. And Brian's actually playing in Mexico. He's at someone's wedding, and he's out there drinking by the pool. He's like, "Do you want me to show up?" I'm like, "No, because you'll be drunk, so I don't need you to show up." So we reached into our past guests to actually be part of a co-host today, and also the Joker, and that is Anshar. Did I say it right?
That's it, Anshar.
All right, Anshar. I always want to say Asher, just because that's people in my Rotary. There's a few of them, and you're a very unique individual. If anybody read the information about you, is you had to overcome a lot in your
Yeah,
life.
a whole
Yeah,
lot.
and you want to do a quick little 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got my start. I was about 75% nonverbal at age 11 with autism and wasn't able to look people in the face, didn't have facial expressions, monotone. I had a giant social gap between me and other people. And that pain just kind of got worse and worse in my life until I got into my mid 20s and I made psychology and neuroscience and a bunch of other topics into my autistic special interests because I thought that would help me get out of my isolation chamber. And then, even though I've been doing information technology for like 15 years, I started challenging myself, putting myself out into different industries, sales industries, marketing, all of that. And that whole process of exploring psychology and the brain helped teach me how to be able to connect to other people. And it's been a real hell of a journey, lots of difficulty, but yeah.
But that limitation you turned into a positive. The fact that it's just us yesterday going, "Hey, you want to do?" And the next thing you know, you're at that point where you can do almost anything you want to do, and everybody should be able to be there, but they're not, right? Because they're afraid. You don't have that luxury. You don't have. I know. Please don't. You don't have that emotional for that. You're just like, what do I need to do? And I'm past that. And you're like a machine to a certain point. And I don't mean that wrong. It's just if you want something done, get you to do it.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble taking action actually. So this whole concept of consistency and habits is actually really close to my heart because it's a lot of the things that go along with autism and a little bit of the comorbidity with ADHD and stuff like that. Is that it can cause some really negative patterning for personal habits, and getting consistency is a really a big challenge. And I had to learn how to put effort into things because I had two polar extremes. Things were either ridiculously easy for me because it was something that my brain could systemize, or it was almost impossible. And that has a tendency to create an underachiever in someone over time. And so that was definitely me. And my couldn't keep anything clean. Couldn't, it was ridiculous. I couldn't manage my time. Nothing. So there was a lot for me to learn there because in the process of trying to add all these things and change all of these things, I had to figure out how to get consistent enough to be able to start seeing changes and be able to see what was working and what wasn't. And if I didn't have that key piece, everything kind of fell apart. So this whole topic is actually something that I had to struggle through at first.
Right. But you're on the other side now, which is
Mhm.
good, right? And uh, last time you were on, I referred a lady on my Rotary. Her son is basically like you, and she's like, I don't know. I'm like, you know what? Watch this video of this guy. We just had him on, and this is what your son could do if he goes through and figures the stuff out and takes all the additional courses and other things. And so she was so happy that I had shared the last time you were on our show. So thank you for
Yeah.
being there. Yeah.
Oh yeah, of course. It's been kind of interesting for me just because I have like videos of me in my 20s and stuff, and sometimes I put them side by side to check my progress, and it's just night and day. And I'm kind of that point now where sometimes I have people come up to me and they're like, "You don't have autism," and in some ways, I mean, it can be a little insulting, but on the other side of it, it's to be able to have gotten over so many hardships to try to get there. And I still have other things in my life, like I didn't get my driver's license till I was 37. So I mean, there are things that were really really difficult for me, but um, I think that getting to the other side and then being able to see the proof of those cycles, it makes it a lot easier to point at different things once you get that facility.
And I'm sorry that I'm looking over here because I wanted to make sure it started. I've been having this issue with StreamYard where it goes to my personal page and it shuts
Ah,
it to where only I can see it.
an audience of one.
Yeah, it's like, okay, everywhere else it does exactly how it's supposed to be on my personal, and it's been that way on all my videos. I'm like, why is on my personal page only, and it's supposed to be public? I don't know. What are you gonna do? All right, so where do you want to start today? Because we were all over with, sales approach. We are going to talk about customer relationships, marketing strategy, brand, all that.
Well,
I want to kind of stay away from branding and the reason, just please don't. It's just too many people. That's like the key word these days, right? Branding, branding, branding.
about the only thing I'll say about branding is that just like all of the other factors we're going to discuss, consistency is important. If you don't have consistent demographics, if you don't have consistent, message, if you don't have consistent values as a company or a person or organization, or if you don't have that, then when you start to get changing results from a changing market demographic, then you're not able to know why, and if you're
Right,
changing too many things at a time, and that's about all you really have to touch on, because that's that same kind of key idea that touches on all of these other things as well.
right. I mean, we've been talking about the customer relationships and staying consistent because everybody tells us, to post and do all this different stuff. And, some people do go their own way and they just they don't have time. I took off from posting on social media, except for my lives, over the almost like 9 months. And it was amazing when I came back and started cutting up my videos and doing shorts, how much more I've gotten connection now versus before. It was just weird.
Yeah, yeah, video content, the market demographic for that changes, and the attention span of the audience changes depending on different subject matters and what kind of audiences you're looking at. So it is really interesting, especially if you have like disparate avatars that live in like different places on the internet, and you get someone like, maybe you have one avatar that's maybe closer to YouTube and another that's like looking at video content on LinkedIn or on TikTok or something like that. It's definitely a different format. The
Mhm.
things that catch attention on those formats are completely different, and again, it speaks to consistency.
Right.
But the other part of consistency, of course, talking about CRM, talking about that customer journey, and how you're going to keep a relationship with them over time, not just super important for results, but also if you're more than an operation of one, them having a consistent experience with dealing with you versus dealing with someone else in out of your same outfit or your organization or your company. Otherwise, there's always that feeling of that they have to talk to that certain special someone to get anything done, and that's a very bad impression to leave. And then, we can kind of skirt around to the different sides of it. I think that one of the main barriers to consistency, um, is probably, what you were talking about with time management. I think time management is definitely a difficult topic for a lot of people. But I also think that people don't realize, some of the psychology and neuroscience that goes into building effective habits. And we have a lot of motivational speakers on that, and people have books that they write, and people write their horoscopes and all of that. But what it really comes down to is being able to take short-term behaviors and to move them into long-term behaviors. And to do that, you have to, kind of focus on things one day at a time for those first 2 weeks. It only takes like 14 to 21 days to establish a new pattern of behavior. There's a famous book called Make Your Bed, and the whole idea is, starting the day with the accomplishment. But there's also a cool effect that happens, which is after that like 3 week period or so, it moves from an intentional behavior to an automatic one. And then at that point, it's almost harder to not make your bed in the morning. It's almost something that you do automatically. So learning how to automate skills and processes, not just for, CRM or for you know, an internal system that you and a bunch of other people, but also inside of yourself, to understand that you have the ability to move intentional processes to automatic processes. Because that's how I learned how to communicate. I mean, that was my struggle.
Right. And back to your whole the time management stuff. I think the biggest thing is limiting your interruptions. I know we won't go down this whole path about time management, but if you can limit your, for say that from 8 to 11, all you do focus on all the stuff you need to focus on. You don't take phone calls, you don't do this, you don't do that. You're going to get so much more done during that period of time in those little blocks than you would. Because that's one of my happiest days was when all my staff went home and worked from home
Yeah,
because I can turn off the phones,
I sometimes complain about my insomnia, but one of the things that I do like about being up all night is that it is very quiet with very few interruptions, which is great for work time. But not everyone focuses the same way. I think, one of the problems there, because we were talking, last time that we spoke, and you were saying that, sometimes you can classify different things with entrepreneurs and stuff, and sometimes people say that maybe they have autism or something. But ADHD actually is something that's quite rampant in the entrepreneur community, and um, because that is essentially a like dopamine starvation of the brain, it does kind of make it necessary to talk for a moment about ADHD, in that The way that dopamine-led responses work is that when they're flat and it's initially starting, that's the strongest impulse. And when you have an attenuated level of dopamine, like you do in ADHD, that initial drive, that initial impulse for novelty to move on to something else is much stronger, because that's the way that dopamine's designed. Is there's this initial surge, and I think a lot of people get this misunderstanding of dopamine. They think of it as a pleasure neurotransmitter, but what it really does is it motivates our behavior. So dopamine might give you the urge to go eat that cake on a table over there, but that doesn't mean the cake's going to taste good. It's not about the pleasure of the cake; it's about the anticipated pleasure of the cake. And understanding that that's a system that actually helps you regulate your habits and gives you the ability to focus. Dopamine regulation is a really important thing, and it's important to talk about because we live in a very high distraction world where people are taking advantage of the novelty of different sources of dopamine and our marketing, the products they sell us, our entertainment. So it can be very difficult when we are inundated by all of that to feel enough of a positive urge to put habits into place to get past that 21-day mark where they become automatic.
Well, I'm gonna go back to your dopamine because I started doing cold plunges, and the dopamine factor you get from that is amazing. You get out of there and you're so happy. I mean, it's amazing, and it doesn't. A lot of drugs will increase your dopamine, but then it'll drop right after that, right? With cold plunges, that dopamine stays around for a long time. I'm
Oh,
talking
absolutely.
hours. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
what a difference. You can focus and everything else afterwards. That I was going to get a cold plunge, but because we've had our pool put in a bunch of other stuff, I didn't get it. But I used my pool, and so I have a good almost 4 months that it's in the 40s, which is perfect because you don't have to do 37 because the range is really 37 to 59. 59, I could be in there for 20 minutes. I'm like, that's not good, but it's amazing how that really affects that character to where you're like, okay, I got to get in there. I want that happy place. Right. And yeah, it's a
It's
totally different world.
it reduces your resistance to doing the things that you need to do. It lowers that, it raises that average level of dopamine. And that way, when you do get a distraction or a text message or something like that, that average level is higher. So it doesn't have that initial heavy surge. And that can be difficult too, because there is a part of the brain that's responsible for restraining impulse. It's the rostral caudal axis of the prefrontal cortex. And in some individuals, that impulse resistivity is actually very low. And when they do get an impulse, it's very hard not to follow it. And it's the combination of the two, along with some other genetic factors, that are a big indicator of things like addiction.
Right. I was
Um,
going to say that sounds like somebody who's drugs, gambling, any of those kind of addictions.
well, I
Yeah.
mean, but a lot of those things are high dopamine activities. You can be addicted to just about anything with dopamine-led behavior, and it's our resistance to our own dopamine-led processes that actually can, make us a little more susceptible to that. But you do have the ability to use it to your advantage too. I think one of the things that people don't think about is that because dopamine's involved in the urge to do things like go get water or food or your basic needs as a human being, it's not one of the systems in the brain that primarily takes a very very long time to reset. Because we're inundated by all of these things in the modern world, and that can kind of attenuate our reaction. And what's cool is if you just go like 3 or 4 days without high dopamine activities, it will completely reset your response. It's kind
Mm.
of like a recreational drug where if you use it, too many times in a particular period of time, it almost has no effect after a certain period of time. And then if you wait, you'll kind of detox from it. And then when you have that first dose again, it hits you super, super hard. That's how dopamine works. And those resistance, those pathways, that I think a lot of people have this kind of binary understanding of the brain, and it's more like a muscle in a lot of ways. Pathways in the brain can atrophy. Pathways in the brain can get reinforced over time. From multiple uses, from multiple dopamine processes, from neuroplasticity. So it's like a muscle you have to work out in more ways than one.
Yeah. And I think, well, what's nice about the cold plunges is it's drugs. You get there and everybody gets there, but that doesn't last as long. And it was weird because you found out with the cold plunge, it just lasts so much longer that there's your go get addicted to cold, and you get addicted to it. You really do. Like you're like, man, I missed my cold plunge today. You only need 11 minutes a week, so you don't have to be in there very long. So
And then cognitive bias is something that enters into it too, because not only do we not feel like we're going to get enough satisfaction from putting things into place or motivating ourselves to action, um, but we can sabotage ourselves that way as well. So there's a lot of different kind of factors that go in psychology, but I think when you start to understand bias in like organism bias, like as far as your memory system's concerned, where you have much more primacy on like negative experiences, failures, that can make it really hard to start new things because your memory system is always storing all the negative stuff and you don't remember the positive stuff. So, I think that being mindful, and that's can be hard for people who are intellectual or, they don't want to, hit bongo drums or and do a bunch of high fives to celebrate something when they get a win. I'm not really like a cheerleader and pom poms kind of person myself, but
I'm not
you know,
either.
whether you got a scientific journal or you got a data sheet where you're measuring your successes or whatever it is that you have to do, is you have to create some kind of concrete system that allows you to be able to acknowledge positive progress. And I think that is another thing that, getting into the whole point of habits and all of that is talking about goal setting, because a lot of people, despite having gone over that concept quite a few times, they don't actually apply it when they're trying to set goals, KPIs, all of that. And failing to do that in a good way so that you can actually measure your progress. And then, of course, being consistent enough so that you can see what factors have changed that affect that progress. That can be really challenging too. So self management, really.
So I want to go back to the dopamine and
Mhm.
action and all that stuff. How can you use that as a marketer?
Well,
Is there a way, you follow what I'm getting at? Is there a
yeah,
way
yeah,
to,
you can
yeah,
you can do it two different directions, right? You can do it toward yourself as a marketer for your habits as a marketer,
I'm
or you can
talking
do it
to get the
outward to your
customers.
audience.
Yeah, let's talk
Yeah.
about customers. Yeah.
So there's two different kinds of behavioral kind of incentivization. We go through an intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So in psychology, an intrinsic motivation would be your own, autonomy, your own values, the things that are important to you, your pursuit of your interests, pursuit of your pleasures in life, the things that are important to you. Whereas extrinsic motivation is the stuff that you have to do, to make money, to be able to cultivate a positive reputation. The things that can be difficult to do because they don't have their own um, inherent joy. It's really about the outcome of that. We're not really necessarily thinking if we're at a job that we don't like, we're making money. We're thinking about the money, not about the job. So one of the things that marketers, can take advantage of in that is by understanding that there are intrinsic drivers to behavior and then there's extrinsic. You can motivate people to do extrinsic things, but you have to basically look at the end result and place all of the emotionality and all of the reaction on that rather than on the inherent process. Whereas things that give you intrinsic worth, things that make you feel more powerful as a person, give you more skill sets, or give you confidence, or a pursuit of a passion, the the way that you market those things is different. And so understanding the psychological benefit of what it is that you do, because I think most of us get that basic idea of, constructing a customer avatar so that you can understand their hopes, their pains, their dreams, their fears, all of that. But all of those hopes, dreams, fears, goals, those are all oriented towards either intrinsic or extrinsic things. And you have to use a completely different psychological approach with them because for some of those things, doing them themselves is not their own reward. And I think the hardest challenge that people have in marketing is if they sell a product that people don't either know that they need or they're not aware of what it is that you do, what it does. And you have to be able to translate that, hopefully, ideally into something that's intrinsically linked in behavior as opposed to extrinsic. Otherwise, you have to provide so much social framework for why they want that extrinsic thing that it can make marketing very, very difficult. And sometimes it can make advertising a real pain as well.
The problem about asking you a question is you have to go. So, you know what I mean? It's not like an easy answer. It's you go through the whole psychology and everything about it and how people are, and that's not a negative. I'm just saying it's instead of someone just saying, okay, well, this is how you do it, you go so much deeper into it so you understand what's going on. So, all right. So, because the main thing is that our whole thing we do as a business is we want to connect with our clients. We want to stay in front of our clients. We want to speak. Then by doing that is being consistent. What do you recommend to do?
Well, one of the most powerful drivers of behavior, especially if you want a customer to keep coming back to you in like a retention model or relationship or a customer journey, is the importance of the first time. When someone has their first experience, not only do they get emotional primacy with those memories, but there's this thing in psychology that we call anchoring. And everything that we do after that first interaction is compared to that first interaction. People talk about the importance of first impressions, but that first impression is also of your product or of your, how you troubleshoot, or, what kind of message you use, or whatever that thing, that aspect of you becomes valuable to them that first time. And so I think that's why, market research is so important. Understanding your customer is so important, because the way that you follow up and engage with a 65-year-old CEO versus the way that you follow up and stay engaged with maybe a younger demographic who's there because of, the pleasure of an activity, those relationship management, that journey will actually look different based on where their emotional value is. And one of the things that's really good is to try to attach um, common behaviors, common things that are very important in your demographic to the value of your product and your service, but also to that experience too. I think that one of the most defining experiences for a customer is what happens when they have a problem. um, Whether they get a really great deal and you make a great impression, and then they have that social desire to, want to share contacts and refer you and all of that, you want to be able to keep that energy high. But that second opportunity to be able to really nail someone is when something goes wrong, because things invariably do. And so being able to redirect the experience, to not be about what it is that went wrong, but to be about the fact that you properly prepared them for the fact that that could go wrong. You let them know the entire process so that they felt secure and that you took care of it exactly like you said that you would. And the effort that you put into consistency of that experience, which, in a lot of ways can be a loss for a company at first glance, but people don't really think about the value and how important it is to keep the customers that you have. Start getting so focused on outreach and acquiring new leads, and you have to look at the lifetime customer value of your customers, because getting their loyalty, having an experience in management and a journey with them that actually hits them, they actually feel like they have a friend in the business. That completely changes all of those peer groups and pattern of behavior in a really powerful way.
Well, so thanks for that short answer. Appreciate it. Didn't know if I
I
could
have
get you to laugh,
autism. I'm
man.
trying, man. I told you I make an outline so I don't talk too much.
No, you're good. You're good. It's just one of those things. How do we stay connected with our client? And you're saying it's the journey. So basically, the bottom line that I'm hearing is you need to know who your client is. You need to know what they want and how, and focus your message that way to them. Is that what I heard
Yeah,
in a shorter
20% of your
version?
effort is going to give you 80% of your results. You have to find out what the 20% is with that particular kind of customer. And, it's going to be the things that on the valence of what's important to them and what isn't. Trying to have just a rote process for CRM or for a journey, maybe if you're trying to do it for your own internal sense of consistency, that's good. But just as variegated as we were talking about the emotional process of the sales process, and how doing the same thing to two different customers, you can close one and walk the other. The same is also true of how you handle, problems, and how you diffuse a situation, and what do you do in when a circumstance, or when a guarantee gets tested. And the emotional notes, one of the things that really bothers me a lot when I take a look at some of the ways that we track client information is, if we're having a person to person interaction with them, we should have notes about their personality, things that are important to them, what their values are. The more that you can dial down on those kinds of notes and give yourself actionable information. And then the second part of that is debrief, whether it's a successful sales transaction, but also for retention and for the journey. Debrief that. You debrief that with the customer in the form of a review, or hey, I wanted to, spend that time with you. I wanted to talk about your experience, and, get some feedback from you. Lots of check questions. And then being able to get that information and have good actionable data, because the customer and the need for what it is that you do, and those aren't static things. Those things change. Those emotional and social values change, and being able to keep your finger on that means that you can change your focus as the customer's needs change.
I had a question for you as you were talking, and I forgot my question, but it was about the first part about, understanding who your client is, and that interaction with them. and set, you and then you went to the next level of make sure you do this and you follow up with them, because that first experience is huge. It's the biggest part of it. And you're right. You need to connect with them, and you need to make sure that you understand how that worked for them, right? And that's that after action report. And I remember it now. It's about taking notes. The people who are the most successful in my industry when it comes to dealing with leads and speaking to clients is they take ridiculous notes. I mean, ridiculous. There's so much notes that they put in. Where for myself, I'm one of those people who remember, it was that way for many, many years. It's getting harder now, but I could remember everything about that person just by the conversation we had,
I
right?
probably shouldn't say this, but I still remember account numbers from customers who would come in and want to make payments on their accounts when I was working in the jewelry store. If I put my hand
Well,
on a
that's
10 key
you're
and
a
think
little
about their
different.
face,
Yeah,
yeah.
you're a little different. Very unique to that point where me, I can walk by a monitor or whatever, and I can tell you everything was on it. I have that type of memory. But it's also a negative for a lot of stuff because, like you say, we're not used to telling everybody how much we've done. And one of the things that your customer needs to know is how great you really are, humbly, meaning that that information needs to get out there from another source. And that's another way to keep that client going forward.
There's another great process that I've learned to use, and I think I've adapted it from a couple of different industries that I've been in, kind of made my own version. But when I first get on a call with someone or a session or go to do something with them, um, I ask them about what's important to them and what they feel is going to make that particular experience valuable for them. And then that way, I make sure that we agree on what a rubric of a good experience is. Because when you get to the end of that process, people won't always remember what you said. They'll remember how you made them feel. So if you're able to go through that checklist with them and be like, well, you said you had like 5 goals when you came in today. Let's go over it again. Let's make sure that we hit all of them. You know, if you do that and you do that follow up, because the power of debrief is that you're doing it while you're still inside the window of short term memory. Right after you're done, closing a sale or walking someone or objection or you're trying to fail a turnover, whatever, you have that golden hour to be able to reflect on the small idiosyncrasies of that situation and actually have good notes. And then after you sleep and things move into long-term memory, it's only going to be the things that were emotionally significant. You have just that window. And that's why debrief is it was one of the most important parts of sales training. It's one of the most important parts of customer service training, because you have to debrief that whether it's a success or a failure. What went well, what could have gone better or differently. And when you have the facility to actually look at those tiny details before they disappear, that's when you need to consider them, because after that the actual data is gone and it's just a win or a loss.
So what I'm hearing is, after all that, was basically the emotional attachment you can get with your client during your meeting with them is what they're going to remember long term.
Absolutely. And being able to, that was so important, is that was the key turning point of the sale, why isn't it in your notes? Because you're going to definitely want to remember that when they have a problem.
Right. So I mean, you explain it, but I'm trying to dumb it down for people like myself who are just salespeople. But what I mean by that is just it's so basically take a lot of notes, make sure that you have some type of emotional connection during your meeting with them. Make sure that whatever you find out what their goals are for the meeting and reiterate those to them at before you get over and make sure that you hit everything they wanted to hit. Is that
I
what I'm hearing?
can, I can, yeah, exactly. I can basically give you, because I know that we don't have a lot of time left. I can give you basic list of things to make sure that there's not a gap, and if there is, to know why. And that's, are you getting enough feedback? Do you have all the right tools that you need? Do you know the skills that you're actually going to need in order to be able to accomplish the thing? Do you know how success is measured? Do you know what's in it for you? Do you have a system of holding yourself accountable for expectations? And capability. Have you ever done it before successfully? If you haven't, why not? And whatever gap you have is going to be for one of those reasons. So, if when you start to work in leadership and management, you try to diagnose problems in that same way with other people and say, okay, so what's the gap? This guy's not, not offering credit. Is he getting feedback after the sale? He's not doing it. Is he trained on the credit systems? Does he actually know how to use them, or is he intimidated? Does he know how many applications he's supposed to get today and what those KPIs are? Does he know what's in it for him? That he's going to get, triple the average sale because they get credit? And what am I doing to hold him accountable on that 21-day basis so it can become an automatic behavior? Whether you're directing that at someone else or at yourself, that's how you police yourself and get yourself past those 3 weeks and get yourself corralled, and then it's automatic, and then you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Well, I mean, I could talk for another half hour, but people, we like to keep these things in 30 minutes because, and then you can cut it up for 10 minutes so people can actually watch it. But I could, like I said, I'm serious. I could, break down more, but because you look at the analytically how it is,
Well, that's
or
how I had to do it. Otherwise, I
I
couldn't do it.
I I know, I understand that. I'm just saying that's who you I mean, so everything about when we talk to you, you can tell us why and whatever from the brain side and how it's connected and all that, where somebody else might be more emotional. You're totally analytically, this is how you do it, this is whatever. And then I'll take that list of what you said you could send us. And then we can put it attached to this, on
Yeah,
YouTube. So that way people can
absolutely.
download that list. But it's just a matter of making sure that you connect with your clients and stay connected with your clients, because especially in this world where it's so easy to get distracted with all the different stuff out there and all the fancy little things that they have. So, Anshar, thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, always, anytime. Anytime you want to. I know that more of a deep dive thing when you get in a conversation with me. So I mean that kind
No,
of goes
it's
with the
great.
autism, but yeah,
No, it's great because you're actually, again, most salespeople are more emotional than analytically, right? So I'm the unique person where I'm in both. I totally understand what you're talking about. I totally get it, but I also can connect with the other side. I'm your idea guy who can sell the idea, which is only 15% of the population.
yeah.
So that's the difference in why when I'm talking to people, I totally get it. It's about the conversation. It's about how do we connect? And then you just solidified how important it is, the emotional side of it, to connect with your clients so that they remember you after they go to sleep and it becomes long-term memory.
Yeah, and there are different kinds of categories, just like those emotional triggers we talked about for sales. You can literally apply those to the relationship with salespeople too. Like a trust person will always go back to the same person that they know. They don't want to start over from scratch. You know, each individual emotional trigger has its own flip side as well. So there's lots of emotional dynamics to learn, and really it's about the end result though, which is success and making sure that their experience is positive and that they had an experience worth talking about, worth sharing with someone else. And because of the way that negative experiences are processed by the brain, if someone has a bad experience and says it has way more weight, almost 15 times as much weight as it does when someone shares a good experience. So making sure that the kind of consistency that you have in the way that you do what you do, what you're passionate about, make sure that that there's so much good out there that it lifts that opinion.
Yeah, that's that old statement where, a happy client will tell 10 people, a pissed off client will tell 20. And that's the difference. And so, it gives them, so you don't want to make them upset. You want to make them happy. And still, and out of that 10, one will give you a review. So even if you
Well, when
push it.
something goes wrong, that's an opportunity. It's
Right.
not a failure. It's not a frustration. It's only going to be that if you paint it that way.
Right.
So this is a fantastic opportunity for me to show you why that warranty that you got is so valuable. So here's the process that we do. I'm going to have it back in your hands like this. And if for some reason we can't repair it, this is the process that we go through. I want to make sure we're on the same page before we ship it off. If you have any questions, and your energy that you come into with dealing with problems completely changes the way that their energy is going to be in having that experience.
Right. All right. So you helped us today with coming on the show and doing all that. Is there anything you're looking for? What's a perfect client for you that you're looking for?
Um,
Or
I
you're like,
help
I got too many. I don't need anybody.
I help people do what they're passionate about. I'm a systems person, and the problem for me, if I would have had a roadmap growing up, I would have been great because I could follow a recipe list like crazy. That's good for me, but I never understood all of the individual components and where other people had to learn things, in a completely different way than me, and so I didn't relate to any of it, and I had to come up with my own way. What I really want to be is I want to be the person that I needed for other people and have that person who actually understands all of the mechanics so that you actually know what variables go into your success and what that would look like and what those steps need to look like. So that's my ideal client. But I think the other half of it is like, we had mentioned last time, I'm involved with the octopus movement, a bunch of nonlinear thinkers. And that's kind of what we're talking about, the difference, the approach, the emotional approach versus the logical approach, and building systems versus going through the experience and the passion. And there's a lot of merit to talking to both sides of it. So one of the reasons I love being in a group like that is to get to see the far outside outliers of those opinions and get to see how different it is.
Okay. So if somebody needs systems and know how to and right, and that's you. is
Yeah,
what I'm hearing.
emotionally driven sales system. If you want to understand all of the individual steps that are going to go and use your own psychology to your own benefit to be able to achieve your goals, if you want to have a better understanding of how to reach your customers, design copy, emotionally driven systems for retention, for sales, all of that. That's what I do. That's what I specialize in, and training, of course.
Of course, but that's exactly what you're looking for.
Hmm.
So when Brian and I put our sales thing together in Vegas next year, we're going to have you there. Okay.
I'd love to go. Yeah. Plus,
I mean,
I'm over
you're
here
going
in
to
Nevada all
speak.
the time, so
You're not going to just go. You're going to speak. So I hope you're okay with
yeah,
that.
I'm totally down.
All right, sounds good. Thank you again for being here today. Really appreciate you, and I
Well,
appreciate.
we're doing this so he can drink in Mexico, so hopefully he has a good time.
Well, it's a wedding he's at, so he's just being there, for the wedding. So I'm sure he would have jumped on, but I'm like, why even? I'm so into perfect, video and no distortion and having good Wi-Fi and connections that I would have been up. Go away, Brian, because it's not going to be a great connection at a hotel there. All right, Anshar, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. And if you can think of another topic you want all the details on, just let me know, and I'm happy to appear again.
Well, I'll hit you up for the perfect sales process.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Make it a great day. Thank you for being here. If you like what we do here, best way to support us is just go to our YouTube channel and subscribe. And again, thank you so much, Onshore. Thanks for being